Hi, my name is Ken Ming from UCSI University. My question is, you've not mentioned anything about the subsidy rationalization program, something that you were actually very gung-ho about last year and got perhaps criticized for going on the 100% bankruptcy figure. So it's given the fact that it's a very important component of improving our public finances, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, two things I'd like to say. The reason why I didn't cover the subsidy, because today we're just talking about the ETP update. But that, since you raised the question, I'm still gung-ho about subsidy rationalization, as I was before. When we went to the public and sought public's opinion on doing this, generally speaking, the comments we got from public was three things. Agree that we rationalize subsidy. Number two, do it in small doses, not in a big bang. Number three, stretch it over a longer period of time. And if you like, in all the discussions I had at public forum, generally people want to see us drag it over 5 or 7 year time frame so that you don't put shocks into the system. And so those were the three key points that emerged in those conversations. Now, we have begun to do some of the subsidy rationalization. We did prices increases. In fact, around 97, we brought it up to market. And so we've made, I think, 3 rounds of increases in around 95. We've also removed the subsidy to foreign students who come to universities, and so they pay. When I went to study at Warwick, I remember paying full rate, whereas the local students have to pay a subsidized rate. In the past, we were subsidizing all our foreign students in Malaysia, so we made some amendments in that respect. So some of the things we done on electricity, we moved the tariff forward. In all of the conversations we had we were always mindful of the bottom 40%. So when we made the changes to the tariff for electricity, we have said anyone who spends less than 100 kilowatt hour a month, you take your electricity free. You don't have to pay a single cent. If you spend more than 100 kilowatt hour a month, up to 300 kilowatt hour a month, because it's metered, there is no change in tariff for you. Those two categories, the 100 kilowatt hour a month and the 300 kilowatt hour a month, that constitutes 70% of our electricity users. So essentially, the increase that we're referring to is only hitting the top 30%, and also the consumers, the industrial consumers. So in essence, we were always needing to protect the bottom 40%. And lately, as a result of concerns around increasing food prices and commodity prices, you saw even riots in Israel. There's a lot of issues, and you saw some, in many, many countries, it's become a serious concern. And some of the listening on the ground, we've heard a very loud noise from the people that we have to look at the cost of living as a very important NKRA. So hence the government included cost of living as a very important component of the GTP. So it's the 7th GTP. We have 6 NKRA. We've added the 7th cost of living. Now, cost of living, why I mentioned that is because with regard to rationalization, you now have to say, well, if cost of living is an issue for the public at hand, you then have to weigh that in relation to how robust you chase the subsidy rationalization. That said, let me return to the point about the bankruptcy, to again and again to correct the perception. A lot of people said, Idris said the whole of Malaysia will be bankrupt by 2019. You know, they forgot that I made the word if. The qualification is if. Let me repeat. If our economy grows for the next 10 years on average of less than 4%, and in fact, our scenario was around 3%, if, so 3%, that means we don't actually do the ETP. There's no ETP. By the way, when I spoke, there was no ETP then. So if we grow at 3%, and we do not curb our operating expenditure, which includes subsidies, and therefore we need to borrow at a rate of 12.5%. In fact, the same numbers is picked up by the Auditor General in his report. So that means if our annual debt rises at 12.5% per annum, as we did in the last 10 years, and if our revenue does not grow, because the economy grows at only less than 4%, then we've had it. The presumption is we've had it. That means we would have reached our debt position of 100% of GDP by 2019. But rest assured, of course, we in government will never allow that to happen. We will do everything in our powers to cause that not to happen. Hence, we introduced the ETP, the Economic Transformation Program, so that we will then be able to grow at higher than 4%. So it will then be able to get more revenue for the country. And if we can do that, I think there's a way forward. And so really, when you think about it, you grow the top line, it's in any business. So if you grow the top line, it's in this case, our economy needs to grow, and then the government revenue needs to kick in. And there are many ways to, even if you don't kick in, even at the same rate, if we were to increase our take on the revenue, such as GST, because we have 28 million people in this country, only 1 million people pay tax, and the others 27 million don't, and some of them complain. Now, if most countries move towards a consumption tax to allow people to pay on the basis of what they purchase, so in essence, we could actually grow our revenue. Some of our quick calculation, back of the envelope calculation, in fact, not more than back of the envelope. If we ran it at 5%, I think our total revenue is about 6 billion ringgit a year. If we ran it 7%, the same rate as Singapore, that's 13 billion ringgit over a 5-year period. So there's a lot of revenue, even if we did not grow our economy at 6%. So therefore, you should grow the economy at greater than 6% by pushing on the things I described. At the same time, you increase your collection of the revenue through a much more effective tax rate. That means balancing much more away from just direct taxes into consumption tax. So we could actually find ourselves with a lot of levers to pull. I would suggest in any country that we run, we have to make sure to grow the economy. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, Idris, but you must not borrow money now, because if you borrow money, you increase the debt. My point is that we should borrow money, provided that money is spent as an investment, development expenditure, rather than operating expenditure. Because if you borrow money, government debt is put in projects that will help you to grow the top line, that's okay. But if you borrow money to spend on operating expenditure, then we run into trouble. And that's why when you run an economy in a country, we need to make sure that our borrowing is disproportionately focused on investment. That's why a lot of the projects under ETP, we'd like to borrow money to cause this to happen, because it will propel revenue, and therefore income revenue for the country and growth for the economy. Thanks.